For a while, we get kind of stilted and formal. But where we end up finally is being much more comfortable knowing who we are and being able to relax and be real. So this includes every part of us, who we are, every part of us, how we inhabit our life in a way that's aligned with conditions that are always changing and very specific and very demanding, so that we can use our life in the best way. This takes a lot of paying attention to how we experience and inquire into how we think and how we talk and how we act. Our precepts guide us in this. They give us prompts, basic rules for how to handle the full sweep of a life. That's for another day. We'll talk about precepts coming up. We always do a precept study in the summer in preparation for receiving precepts in early fall. All the situations that come up and what governs our adventure as a human being is what we are looking into and are called on to respond to. Examining our life, how we think and talk and act, how we choose, and how we respond to conditions that we're faced with. This is always happening, whether we realize it or not. Thich Nhat Hanh, that wonderful, no longer alive Vietnamese teacher, uses the image of watering seeds of Buddhahood in life, in the life of the everyday. Listening, really listening, looking directly is how we water the seeds of our life. If we think about each person, plant, animal, and thing as part of the flower that we are, we've taken the first important step toward caring for the things of this life. Caring for it well. This is how we tend our life, and this is how we tend our practice. This is practice. This is the practice. We welcome new people in orientation, and those who just arrived here unsuspecting, welcome. But when you go through orientation, we lay out how to comport ourselves at the Zen Center. We learn the choreography of practice here, the embodiment of our collective practice in Sangha, and Sangha is the community. That's what we call the community of practice. We learn how to move here as one, how to coordinate and cooperate in such a way that supports not only our own mindfulness, but our collective mindfulness. How unusual it is to move collectively as one in this life. In the social world in general, we're all moving in a lot of different directions. So we learn when we come to the Zen Center, we learn how we enter, how we bow to the cushion, and then bow to the Sangha. As we cross the center line, which runs out from the altar, we bow if we're going over to that side before getting to our seat. We're always in the body. We're always integrating body and mind because they are not separate. And yet, how often, just think of coming into the Zendo. I've seen this happen a lot, and I've done it when I'm not paying attention. I'll just walk in and I'm making a beeline for over there, and I don't even think about it. My mind is leading away. The body has been kind of dissociated from as I scramble over there, right? So mind and body, we always talk about body-mind. Body-mind is what we practice with, and they are not separate. This is an embodied practice. When you're sitting in Zazen, you may be following your thinking and completely forgetting about your body. And then the body starts to hurt. And then the mind starts to chatter about the hurting body and starts to adjust the body. And the body is actually leading the way in a mind that's very unsettled. We don't notice how they're all working together. So we're always in the body and integrating body and mind. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this kind of Sangha alignment that we practice here as an expression of the fundamental interbeing of all of life. This is found in a lot of traditions, and we forget. We really behave as though this is not the case. But all things arise together. We're never alone. We may not see this as we start out in practice, but it emerges right before our eyes and hearts as we continue in practice and develop constancy of practice, constancy of presence. It just comes naturally when we have a regular practice. So one thing leads to another, and we take a close look at how our thoughts and speech and actions affect our conditions and the conditions of those around us. This is what we're doing in a Zen center. This is one of the ways that the Zen center functions in all of its goodness and in all of its conflict. You know, there's no getting away from conflict in human relations. And we learn how to practice, which means to stay present and make choices that lead to and cultivate ongoing connection rather than cutting off. So we're always affecting conditions around us. So, for example, if you're always pissed off and ready to quarrel, of course nobody hears like that. The atmosphere, if that's what's going on with me, the atmosphere around me is seeded with quarrelsomeness and self-absorbed energy. When we're in any strong emotional state, we're very self-absorbed. The self is very absorbed in that energy. And everybody around us walks on eggshells. And the original need that undermines my personal distress that I'm throwing around on everybody never gets seen into or understood or addressed in a way that would bring me true relief. So this is a very brief description of what we're working with in practice and how it really benefits us to be paying attention no matter what we're feeling, looking into it, looking deeply into it. Practice, how we view our ordinary experience, reshapes our life subtly over time when we really get into the habit of being present to what's going on with us at the time, what we're thinking, what we're doing, what our agendas are. We practice at the Zen center and at work and at home. Home is a very important center of practice, and we really, it's so valuable to continue to remember that. When we bring our practice home, everybody at home benefits. Even if practice is never spoken about directly, which is probably, I would recommend not to talk about it too much. It gets a little hard to suffer. Somebody else is always lecturing about it, as I'm doing right now. I don't do this at home. So we don't tell the people we live with how to practice, but we share it by how we behave and how we respond in all the little moments. They can feel and taste practice through their experience with being with a person who is practicing presence and kindliness and responsiveness who's appreciative and aware. We call this living, this way of living, non-self. Over the years, I've had kids grow up with me as a practitioner, and I know a lot of people whose kids have grown up with practitioners, and whether they take to a life of specific practice or not, they are thoroughly infused with practice because they lived with it. So we call this non-self. When we live continually maintaining awareness of what is not us, of the environment around us, of who we are affecting and what we're affecting, this is non-self. Practice at the Zen Center is so helpful in seeing what our habits in group life are. At home with our families, we may, or just with ourselves, we may be so accustomed that we don't notice our carelessness and our inattention and our habits of mind. So it's harder to see ourselves at home. How you take care of yourself or don't. How you treat the people you live with. How you tend to the material environment. This is what makes up householder practice. And we are householders, we are not monastic. We're not training monastically, but in a monastery, it's 24/7 practice. It's no different. It's just a little bit more of a pressure cooker. There's less distraction and entertainment going on. So we always are looking at what is needed. And this is highlighted in the way that we train with Sangha at the Zen Center. Our house and home Sangha, though, is who we more completely live a practice life with. We live with each other, and we who've been practicing here have gotten to know each other more and more as we attend to the work of maintaining the center. But on Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, morning, noon, and night, and in the middle of the night. We collaborate, we include, we listen with those who are at home. We respect and live the kind of life that we want to live. We discover what it is we want, and we look into how have we worked our way away from that? What have we contributed to conflict at home? And what could we do differently? What kind of life do we want to live? We're asking that nationally. What kind of life do we want to live, hopefully? We're always living this life today. There's always room for the Dharma of this moment. So this talk is all about, I'm going over and over and over the same points, just so that as we all go away, we're reminded to bring the practice everywhere with us. Letting each ingredient count, each thing be its true self, each person be who they are. This is our home country, and it is the embassy of the home, the country of home. Our house is the embassy of the country of home. Thich Nhat Hanh brought up this word, embassy. He said it's an embassy for the Buddha. The center of affairs where everything is carried on, right? Maybe we could talk about our Zen Center, we could call it the Sangha Jewel Embassy. And this is where the rule of Buddha life and the representatives of the Buddha way, we, the Sangha Bodhisattvas, live. So often somebody asks, and this happens often on Thursday nights when we do group sanzen, group interview, how do I practice at home? How do I practice at home? How do you all practice at home? So that's a challenge. How do I practice when I'm not around people who share the practice? And I say, the very same way that we practice at the Zen Center. What makes for a sense of calm and peace and happiness here? And very often people come here and they say, oh, it's so peaceful. Well, yeah, because we're all doing the same thing. And we have all agreed, we have the same contract, right? We're all working in the same direction. And that's not always the case at all. So what makes for a sense of calm and peace and harmony? If life is too complicated, what choices could you make to simplify? If you're overwhelmed by stuff, what isn't essential? If you're always tired, where is there more room for rest? Often people say, I don't have time to practice. I know that feeling. And the thing is that the only time to practice is now. And the practice is not always just sitting and doing zazen. Sometimes it's, cleaning your desk off. Maybe it's time to clean the desk. I say that because it's really time for me to clean my desk at home. I keep putting it off. If you're always tired, where's the room for rest? When you're impatient, what's missing from this moment? What is the source of the impatience? The heart of our practice, no matter where we are, is mindfulness, looking into what is. When awareness, the awareness function of ourself is set on off, is set on habit pattern, then we get trodden over by circumstances and habits. They're in charge. And we can feel really tired and confused and dissatisfied. The first noble truth, dissatisfaction, some problem. But when our awareness function is set on, then we experience each moment freshly as a choice. And it can even be filled with a big problem. But there's something about it when we're really present that shifts. We have a choice. Okay, how am I going to respond to this? How can I be kind and patient here? What's really needed? What's an accurate response? And what doesn't add anything more to it? So this is all about appreciating what is, whatever it is. Whatever it is complete right here. And is asking for a response, which is a good response, which is a beneficial response. Sometimes that's hard to find, to figure it out. We just do our best. So all these words and notions are circling around the Buddhist teaching of non-self. Being present with everything, one with everything. It's not a matter of not having a self, which is what often people misunderstand. Because clearly we have a self. We don't say no self, we say non-self. We have a self. And you fall down the stairs and go boom, that's the self. that's happening. But living from non-self is a kind of living like living with a flowing question. Which self? Which self do I call on here in these conditions? What needs attention? What portion of home needs attention? The sink is full of dirty dishes. This is myself. I see what's to be done right now, plain and simple. That comprises self moment by moment. during sesshin, during retreat, we dedicate a period of work every day to work practice that we call samu. And if you've done samu, you've no doubt had the experience of being very absorbed in doing just one thing, which is very pleasurable, no matter what it is. And I remember when I was given the task at a retreat of getting a whole bunch of blackberry bushes away from a tree that they were overtaking. And I thought, oh no. It just had so much dread. And yet, when I got to it, it actually was really fun. But even more than fun, which was my response, it was terribly interesting, and I learned an awful lot. I don't know how closely you have had an experience with the roots of blackberry, but they're amazing. They're amazing. They're a real Dharma teaching in itself, because every root reaches out and attaches to other roots, not just blackberry roots, but its whole environment is attached. Mutual nurturance, nourishment. So when we're doing work like that, wholehearted engagement, we disappear into the doing. And then it's done. This is an experience of non-self. You know, maybe when you're writing a paper at school, initially you're like, oh no, what am I going to do? And I don't have time. You do all this kind of thing, but once you get down into it and you know you're following the thread and you're finally getting into it and then, wow, I think it's done. You know, this is true with so many things. It's called complete activity. Body-mind engaged in the dance of work, choreographed by the needs of the task. I really like using the word choreography for practice, because we are always, this is true with yoga, we're always in a position, we're always moving in the body. The body is engaged no matter what we're doing or where we are. So how do we have a sense of our life as a choreography? And that's one way to move at home, to enjoy. You know, I was thinking when I was connecting these thoughts up, I was thinking about what's the choreography of playing on a cell phone? You know, what are all the choreographies that we habitually engage in? And sometimes if you're having kind of constant pain in a certain area, looking at how you're moving through your day will show you exactly where that pain is coming from, what habitual motions are leading to certain kinds of pain and distress. So relating to our home in this way is how we practice at home. Each item, each process, the laundry, gardening, fixing a lamp, talking to your neighbor, these are all self in the doing, coming forth together. Everything comes forth together simultaneously. I hope that you work with that particular koan. How is everything coming forth together simultaneously? Because it's right before our very eyes. It's a very ordinary observation. So take a look. And then finally at home, it really helps to designate a spot for quiet or an embassy for mindfulness, a certain place in the house. And some people like to have an altar in every room. But I was thinking about my little neighbor who's about 3 feet tall. I often talk about him because he's such a grateful guy. And he was always blowing up and complaining and saying no. I mean, often it'd be quiet in the neighborhood and then I'd hear him say, no, and it would resonate through the neighborhood. And raising a ruckus, the poor guy, he's 3.5 or something. And his parents were exhausted, and his older brother was like, oh no, right? You could see the whole family just. And so finally, when the preschool was going to kick him out, his parents realized that they really had to do something drastic. So what they did was they set up a little room in their house, which was a quiet room. And he helped them make an altar with his favorite rock and a picture that he had drawn of himself being peaceful. That's what he put on his altar. That's what he puts on it. That's it. It's there. And so whenever he's having a hard time, he is now aware. It's helping him become aware. I'm having a hard time. And he takes himself and sits himself on a cushion in front of his altar, a special cushion just for there. And when he told me about this, he was beaming. He was so happy that he had learned something about how to control himself. Because he was always miserable, and he knew he was making everybody miserable, but he didn't have a tool, and this was his tool. And when this came up, I thought, well, that's exactly what we do. That's what we're doing here. We have our altar, we have our cushion. And when we're really distressed, I recommend the first thing to do is to sit down, quiet down, breathe, and immediately or pretty soon, or after a little while, things get better. Things get more manageable, one way or another. So one of you mentioned in Sanzen the other day that you've taken to stopping during the day for even a few minutes and returning to breathing and quieting and relaxing body tension that we gather unconsciously when we're absorbed in working. And this is the heart of practice. This is how we practice at home, stopping and recalling this very moment as the one place where our life is happening. This is such an important part of using our life well. And it's so simple. There's no technology involved. No money is involved. Just pure value. Discovering our natural treasure right at home, wherever we are. So I hope this is a good reminder to us all to remember to just bring this practice, to just remember to practice wherever we are. Thank you.